Anthony Davis re-aggravated his right Achilles injury in Sunday's game against the Denver Nuggets, understandably leaving Lakers fans pretty concerned about his status going forward. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and this is your #1 source for learning about the unique medical side of the world of sports. We're going to take a look at how AD re-aggravated his tendon here, and then talk just about this whole story with, should he have been out there? Was this risky? What's going on? What are kind of the concerns going forward? If you're new here and you enjoy learning about this side of sports, please consider subscribing. Hit that like button if you enjoy this video, and let's get started. As we know, AD has been dealing with what the Lakers have called right Achilles tendinosis. And the tendinosis part's actually really important, which we'll get to later on. But let's take a look at the play where he re-aggravated it tonight. Certainly this position here with his right foot as he's pushing off, this is a position where he's going into plantar flexion, pushing off on the ball of his foot, activating that gastrocsoleus complex and stressing the tendon. This is certainly a position where you worry about injury to the Achilles. As we kind of go through this play a little bit more, yeah, there's some contact. He kind of bumps knees with Jokic here. People wondered if that was initially what was going on. He then takes a second step, and here again on this move, we can see there's additional stretch on that Achilles tendon. Here, his toe is kind of up further towards the shin, which is dorsiflexion, and that's basically pulling everything along the backside of this Achilles tendon. Now, in this position, the Achilles and that muscle complex is going to be eccentrically loaded, meaning it's stretching, but it's trying to contract to then push off for AD to explode forward to get around Jokic. Now he then kind of comes through, he lands right here. This landing position doesn't look too terrible. If we fast forward, then we can of course see he's reaching down, kind of grabbing in that classic area for an Achilles injury. And then again here, grabbing right at that kind of location that we'll talk about is kind of most susceptible to these Achilles injuries, that backside of the heel, kind of that mid-substance portion. If we look here at this other view to try to get a sense of which step might have been painful for him, initially here when he pushes off that right leg, really doesn't seem to react too much. There's where we see that contact from Jokic's knees kind of bumping with him. And so I think that's why AD kind of makes that reaction he does. And then with this subsequent step where he pushes off, we don't really see too much change in terms of a clear look back kind of snap moment. So I really think we're talking about either this first kind of push off he made on this drive in this position, or if we advance a little bit right there, when he had additional stretch on that Achilles. Now what we're officially hearing is that he re-aggravated his right Achilles tendinosis. There's some swelling, which is definitely concerning, and he's gonna get an MRI on Monday. The #1 thing Lakers fans are gonna ask is why was he out there if he was dealing with Achilles pain? And this is where it's actually really important to get our terminology correct when we're talking about what was going on with his tendon. Here's AD after the Grizzlies game describing in his words what the injury actually was.
I want to say it's not the actual Achilles tendon where, you guys are thinking about, whereas, it could be scary.
Okay, so right off the bat, he's telling us that it's his impression it's not the actual tendon itself, even though they've been calling it tendinosis. Let's listen more.
I forgot what the name of it is. Something that's over that's pretty sore. So
it's something that's over it that's pretty sore, but it's not the tendon itself. This is actually a pretty big deal. So the Lakers were calling this tendinosis. Tendinosis implies degeneration, damage to the actual collagen fibers and structure of the tendon itself. Tendinitis is more of a true inflammatory process, but doesn't imply that there's actual degeneration or disorganization of the collagen fibers. But those are both problems with the tendon itself. So when AD says it's not the tendon itself, it's the thing that goes over it. So this is a tendon cross-section, and it's not like it's just bundles of collagen that are kind of freely floating there. They're organized in this structure where you have bundles of collagen fibers that are then bundled together in these fiber bundles, but all of it is surrounded by this lining called a peritoneum. It's sort of the sheath that goes around all these different ropes of collagen that make up the tendon. And that tendon sheath, the peritoneum, can develop inflammation. There can be some scar tissue that forms underneath of it. It can be painful, it can be swollen. And that's a thing called tenosynovitis, which would make sense that AD wouldn't really remember the word. But that's not really true damage to the tendon itself. Even now that AD has re-aggravated this, there's some swelling. That can all still be from this tenosynovitis. You can have swelling there. If you think of basically the friction whenever you're activating those muscles and that sheath is trying to move around the fibers, that can kind of flare things up here. So the nuance here with the description is actually really important. In one condition with tendinosis, there's degeneration of the tendon. The tendon is damaged. These collagen fibers are disorganized. The tendon can become weak. And so then when we see an injury, we think more about rupture. But if it's like AD said, and it's just the thing over it, that makes me think that the Lakers feel the actual tendon structure is just fine, which then when I see a play like this, doesn't really make me think about a rupture right away. Either way, I will say the Lakers have a pretty good idea already if he suffered a major Achilles injury. There's some really basic physical exam tests called the Thompson test, where you get a pretty good sense initially if the Achilles is completely ruptured. Ultrasound is also really helpful here. It's a very superficial tendon. It's close to the skin. In the locker room, you can do a quick evaluation to see if the tendon fibers are still intact. So bottom line here, if the imaging and the evaluation really showed no damage to that tendon itself, but I don't think there's a risk in him being out there. You can re-aggravate that tenosynovitis, and in that case, they really shouldn't keep calling it tendinosis, because it's two different things. Either way, I'm sure they're gonna be a lot more cautious with him going forward. This was not an overly aggressive play. This was a normal basketball move, and it was enough to flare this up to where he's got swelling. So they're gonna need to scale things back. They're probably gonna need to give him more rest. But of course, the MRI will give us a better idea if there was in fact more damage suffered here that we just can appreciate. Yeah, it's definitely possible that he has an injury to that tendon. I think by now we would have heard if it was ruptured, but you can have a partial injury. So we just gotta wait and see what the MRI shows. But that's it for the video, everybody. Thank you as always for watching. Let me know any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.